the history of mistakes, the history of trying and failing and trying and succeeding and then failing and then trying again. The value to an organization in having somebody or people that have lived through those is very helpful. Now, the other side of that coin, though, Dave, is if you're not careful and you're too rooted in how things were and you become too attached to how things were, it can actually prevent you from making the right choice today.
Welcome to the CEOpeek show, where we uncover the essence of extraordinary leadership by interviewing CEOs with over 90% approval ratings on Glassdoor. Hello and welcome to another episode of the CEOpeek show. And I'm so excited to have with me JP Hamel, the CEO of N2. Hello, JP. Good to see you.
Hello there, Dave. Yeah, it's good to see you as well, sir.
Yeah, you invited to this show because you had a 93% approval rate on Glassdoor. This is how we invite CEOs to the show.
That number's a little stacked here. So I'm a newly appointed CEO, as you know, as of the end of January. So I'm just in my 8th month in tenure, but I've been with the organization for 17 and a half years. And funny enough, when you'd reached out, I reached out to our former CEO, who was one of our co-founders. And I said, we were having this conversation, and his response was, hey, we've built this thing together as a business. I've served in an executive role for some time, and I'm excited to share with you, what can be helpful for your audience on leadership and what we've done for the time I've at least been with this organization.
Yeah, and I love this humbleness and humility. And I remember your first email that you sent it to me. Hey, it's not me. You gave all the credit to your successor. And it's funny that actually when you become a CEO and you're not a founder, it means that you take all the credit of the previous one. But isn't it true from any aspect of the business, not just the Glassdoor one?
Right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to think that even in just a short time, I would get a pretty good rating from our team. But yes, I mean, it's been such an interesting season. I mean, the two owners of our company founded the company 21 years ago. Really solid principles, really solid core values, great product. I've had a chance to watch it and be a part of that growth for 17 of those 21 years. But yeah, like any company that's had great growth, we have our fair share of challenges and people to work with and develop and work through, and bigger and more ambitious goals than we had yesterday. Those continue to grow as well. So it's been a fun season.
You know, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, one of the things that actually drew me, and I was very curious about your longevity. In today's world, when you see executives actually jump ship quite often, it's kind of 16 years in a company, but also how you make your way in the company from you change like, I don't know, like 5-6 time position, all the way to chief revenue officer, then president, then CEO. So what did you learn from that longevity? What did you, especially in today's, that people actually always look at the green on the other side of other companies are greener. What are your lessons from that longevity?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer, and I'm happy to go into some more detail if you'd like, if you find it valuable. The short answer is I love our business, I love our product, and I love our people most importantly. We're in a unique business in as much as we're a franchise model. So the majority of our stakeholders, actually all of our people, either are franchisees or they work hard to support our franchisees internally. We have 350 W-2 team members that work in our organization to support the franchise growth model. And some of them sell franchises, some of them train and coach franchises, some of them work in finance. And then we have 527 franchisees out there running individual magazines, some cases more than just one of them. And I love that balance between creating opportunity for people to start a small business and watch their success. Many of them didn't even think they wanted to run their own business, but they stumbled across our low-cost franchise model and jumped in. And then fast forward 6 months, a year, 2 years later, they're earning significantly more income than maybe they thought they were going to, and it maybe in some cases changed their lives. Of course, it doesn't work out for all, but again, the question you're asking is 16, it's actually 16 and a half years. Thank you for correcting me on that. But having done it for this long, there have been times where, I've explored mentally, like, what would it look like if I left? There were some seasons where there could have been an easy opportunity, and were easy opportunities for me to step aside and do something different. I'm so passionate about this team and this concept and this model that I stuck around long enough for them to say, all right, might as well give him the job. Like, he's been here for this long, he gets it, and he's performing. So, but there have been times that I definitely thought of moving on.
But I'm not sure you got all the way to the CEO if you haven't stayed. Just that there is some things that when you stay for longer time in organizations, that you see things that you cannot see in the 2 years, 3 years milestone,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say at the very top of that uh, pyramid of things that you're kind of lumping in that you could see is just the history of mistakes, the history of trying and failing and trying and succeeding and then failing and then trying again. So every few years, it does seem like we'll go through as a company, a set of decisions that we need to make about, taking the company in a different direction, a better direction to get growth to really pick up speed. And we'll find ourselves making similar decisions about similar things we've made in the past. So the value to an organization in having somebody or people that have lived through those is very helpful. Now, the other side of that coin, though, Dave, is if you're not careful and you're too rooted in how things were, and you become too attached to how things were, it can actually prevent you from making the right choice today. But ideally, that tenure comes with some wisdom. Ideally, that tenure comes with enough experience in the mistakes that we can learn from those, and maybe it makes slight adjustments to the same decisions we might have made in the past.
So how do you keep yourself actually being so long and creating new stuff, but not hanging to the things that you did before? Because when you change, you also change things that you were responsible before. How do you how do you have that capacity to sometimes to be destructive to or disruptive, not destructive, disruptive to the things that you built when you were earlier in time in the company?
And I really do think it comes down to being comfortable with testing things out in an isolated environment, as isolated as you can. Sometimes it's impossible to isolate a strategy or some business case that you're trying to prove out. But as long as the core model is running, and we have a team of people, and any company would have a team of people that are overseeing that core growth methodology, that core growth strategy, and you're just tweaking those and then trying out new things in a totally different environment the best you can. I think that helps you keep it from being disruptive to the day to day, but also forward thinking. Like, we're not just going to keep doing the same thing we've been doing and just expect to get much better results.
So what is the moment that you had when you thought, oh, this is much harder than I thought?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the story and how I got to N2 is I started off as a franchisee. So the model, I started in 2009. I had a career of 16 years prior to that in sales and sales leadership. My most recent stint prior to N2 was a 1 year um, flyer I took on a startup internet company that was venture capital backed, and it didn't go as well as I had planned or any of us had planned. So I found myself looking essentially for the next thing, and I knew about N2 from years prior, and I said, I'm going to give it a whirl. What could go wrong, right? I know how to sell. I've done it forever. I've trained salespeople. I think at the time, N2 did $3 million in 2009. Uh, Maybe not quote me on that one. It was 3 or 13, but nonetheless, it was a small number in comparison. I think it must have been three. We had like 15 or 20 publications in print, and I started a franchise, and I got my teeth kicked in getting started out. I was ineffective in the sales process. I struggled getting meetings on the phone. It took me 3.5 months to get to like break even and go and take the publication to print, which actually is a reasonable amount of time. But my first month and a half was just really, really rough. Now there have been many examples throughout the years, and I can give more of them. But my goal coming here back in 2009 was to be wildly successful as a franchisee and potentially have this opportunity at some point in the future. Well, that happened, but I almost quit before the whole thing got started because I was confronted with a much bigger challenge than I thought I was even taking on in the first place.
You know, when you became a CEO, you were promoted and you were before, what was the hardest thing about uh, becoming a CEO in a company that you were just before C-suite executive?
I think it's making sure you're preserving what was built, but almost like the question you asked me a minute ago, really, but even less specific to the actual strategy of the business, is preserving the integrity of what has made our company great to this point, but trying to elevate and take it to a new level without making a hard left turn. I mean, every organization has a heartbeat and there's a soul of that organization. Some people would love to work at company A, other people that are great people would hate working at company A. We have a lot of great people in our organization, and the hardest thing for me, and I'm thankful I have a great leadership team. I have a couple of great partners on the executive group that really have helped us shape up these decisions. But we want to elevate productivity. We want to elevate our company's performance. We want to elevate what we're getting from our team as we develop people, but we also don't want to change that culture that has brought people here in the process. That's been the hardest part of this, no question about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. For me, when I was promoted, I was a COO, promoted to CEO, was that my peers now become my direct reports. Like overnight, it was such a shift in dynamics and power dynamics. Some of them were much more years. Some of them were employee number 4 in the company. Strong relationship with the chairman and founder, and that was I think that was my biggest challenge. What was that for you? That overnight, people that you were colleagues and peers now become your direct reports. Any resentment? I competed actually with somebody else on this job, and now become my direct report. So, what was that for you?
I'd be interested in how you handled it, by the way. So I'd love to know your experience. That was not really something that for me was an issue. The dynamic of our structure prior to me taking over as this from the CRO to the CEO role, it was a combination of us having a new COO brought in from the outside right around the same time that I was promoted to CEO. So I did not have the challenge of dealing with people who were my peers. I was already high enough in the organizational chart where really everyone still continued to report to me. Now I work with the lead of our operations team, of course, but that was not an awkward same. It was not the same situation you had to deal with. But I'd love to know, like, how did you deal with that? Dealing with employee number 4 now reporting to you.
Yeah, well, it's a different context, so we cannot compare, but it was well, eventually I looked at me because I saw that the problem is always me, and see that to build a relationship, I need to actually change myself into that, from highly competitive to more collaborative. So that's me because I was very competitive. But being competitive comes sometimes on the accounts of being collaborative. So balancing the two was the biggest challenge of my leadership growth.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. And I love that. The problem is always me, right? The problem is always us in those relationships and our inability to take the lead as the leader, right? It's key.
It's funny when I started, it was kind of new CEO and newly married. That was my second marriage, and I have like two similar narratives. My new wife tells me I don't feel heard in a relationship, and my team told me we don't feel heard. And I say, what a coincidence! It can be that all of them are wrong. So probably, yeah, that's kind of so probably I need to listen to my wife. And
Right, 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 right. I would say, to go back to your question, what's been the hardest thing? I would also put on that list very high up is finding the balance of what I would always consider be in my leadership DNA, like servant-based leadership, the inverted pyramid, if you will, right? People don't report underneath me. They are the people that I support in my leadership role. I've always viewed it that way. I can't remember where I learned that first, but I've seen it in a million places, and I feel very passionately about that. But there is, every strength, if that is in fact a strength, which I believe it is, every one of us has strengths that in excess become our weaknesses. And, I do think part of the balance, especially in this role, again, 8 months into 9 months into the gig, is how do I continue to be a strong servant based leader, like providing value for the team in different ways, supporting the people that report to me directly in ways where they feel that there's value in that leadership relationship, but do it in a way where I can completely elevate from the situation and really allow them to figure things out and or develop the strategies on their own in that collaborative environment. Which, again, I think if you were to ask me or them, I believe we run a collaborative organization when we come up with new strategies and plans. But I also find myself really indexing very hard on the servant based stuff, which I find myself maybe being too involved in some things that I probably don't need to be. And I'll just chalk that up to maturity in the role, time in the role, and constantly looking inward at how I could be better at that.
If I look at other interviews, so many CEOs actually come with that servant leadership. Probably we all read the same book years ago, right? And they found, oh, this is a good way to show up in the world. But there is a but what does it truly mean? What does it truly mean for you being a servant leader?
This is probably the most ridiculous way to look at it. I had a mentor of mine ask me this question years ago. And it's like one of those things where, like, like as a kid, you learn something that just sticks with you for a very long time, but it's just an out of the blue conversation. So I had a mentor of mine that said once, the true mark of a good servant leader is if your team would choose you over their share of your salary if the company were to divide up your salary. So if they went to all of my direct reports and said, hey, this is how much JP makes, there's 7 of you, you get 1/7 of this every year as an increase in your income. Or you don't change your income at all, but you're going to keep JP as your leader. And I feel like that has been like my North Star, if you will, like winning in that survey, that the team that I support, that I'm charged to hold accountable and to hire and to fire, also feels that they would prefer to have me as their leader versus their income share of my salary. It might be crazy, even as I say it out loud on record here. It sounds even sillier, but I still feel like that's in my it's like the lens that I look at this through.
I don't think I would have passed this test.
I don't think I would have either, by the way. But that's what I work towards.
Yeah, so well, there's a down when every value when I think about value, every value has a competing value. So when you think about servant leader, what is the what is the competing value for you? What is that competing with?
I think it's maybe lack of enablement, like not or lack of empowerment in some situations, not certainly not all, but in excess when leadership goes on overdrive. I'm not allowing those people to develop in the ways that they ought to if I'm providing too much quote value for them. Now, listen, Dave, I'm not doing anybody's job out here, but there's so many times where I'm trying to clear the deck for my team or putting things in place. And, my sister and I were just talking about this the other day where, she and I both grew up, both my parents worked when we were growing up. And there was just so much that we got out of life because we showed up after school and nobody was home. And, at a very young age, like my kids, they don't have that environment. So to be able to create that development in a person without creating the environment for them to develop in is probably something that I think we could be better at.
Well, when you mention that not being enabling others, the other value, when I look at it for make it into positive, that will make it a value will be like, let's say, taking care also of myself. Sometimes need to make call the decision which doesn't serve others, but serve maybe the organization or the society or external. So, and I coached somebody this week that really cares so much, is really a strong servant leader, cares so much about the team that he tried to unburden the team members and take some tasks for them because he feel that they are burnt out. So the team pull him down rather than lifting them himself up, and that's kind of the dark side of servant leadership. So, like in every value, there's a competing value, right?
Yeah, we're on the same page there, Dave. Definitely.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned earlier, because we look at servant leadership, everyone is talking about their direct reports or the team, but there are so much being servant leader in the context of society and stakeholders outside of the organization. You mentioned the support to the franchisees that you work with, right? What is that for you, that systemic view of servant leadership, or see it from a wider perspective?
Yeah. I mean, my wish, my hope would be that all of our team members would view the people that report to them as the people that they actually are there to support and to lead. And this might not directly answer your question, but I had a conversation with a number of people not that long ago about when you're employed, you're not a contractor, right? You're not an entrepreneur. You're a W-2. You're a team member. But I firmly believe that although I'm a W-2 team member for this company, and I have been for some time, I treat the owners of my company as my client. I treat the people that work above me historically as my client. And if they are happy with the value that I'm bringing to the table, they're going to want to renew my contract and keep me around. And I also feel like that goes the other way. You don't have a productive team at any level, from whether it's CEO down to the directors and executive team, or to a coordinator manager with simply team members underneath them. You don't have the ability to influence or lead people if they don't want to buy what you're selling. And the only way that works is if you treat everybody that you work with like a customer of some sort. Now, for you were talking about our franchise support, those team members do support our franchisees as customers, despite the fact that they feel a whole lot like team members. But that's a clear distinction. But within those teams, within our finance team, within our design team, within our print shop, we have leaders there. And it would be my hope that each of those leaders would view the people that work underneath them on the organizational chart as customers in a way.
Well, it's interesting. Just when you saying, make your customers happy, and I'm thinking, I'm very curious about that. About that, being happy is the only responsibility of us as serving customers. Sometimes I feel like my role is not making my customers happy.
Right. And it depends. It depends on how you frame and what you're selling, right? If you're selling, opportunity within the organization, personal and professional development, the sense of accomplishment because the team won achieved its goal or its mission for the quarter, the month of the year. There are a lot of things that we sell to our team as leaders. And I say this to our franchise support team all the time. Because someone's a customer doesn't mean that they are always right, and it doesn't mean that we're gonna work with them indefinitely. So we have the ability as any business owner to choose to not work with a certain type of customer. I forget what book it was in. It was a Lencioni book. Was it the Advantage, where he discusses the letter sent to Southwest Airline complaining about some experience that the customer had, and the CEO sent a note back to that customer that said, "We will miss you." And just being okay with that. So I know it doesn't translate perfectly, but if you're looking for my lens that I look through when I think about what does servant leadership mean. It's through that inverted pyramid. Does my team prefer me as the leader or the financial benefit of not having me in the org chart that they would benefit from in this weird hypothetical? And then I view treating the people I serve above me and below me as customers, that my job is to bring value in my role to them, and it's going to look differently to each of them.
Yeah, so maybe the other one is that for me is like that being truthful, even if it doesn't make them happy, I want to be truthful for my clients and my customers, and the truth will play. And that was actually my relationship with my board as a CEO too. When I see that, oh, I want to make them happy that they will renew my contract, sometimes I piss them off so badly that I thought that I won't be actually continue because I actually also value the truth in their face, though they sometimes hated the truth. So that's kind of the ambivalent relationship. So it's kind of both and it's not either or. When I looked at that as definitely, I want everybody that will see the value of that, but also uh, keep the integrity of us together. And sometimes we see the truth as it is, and it's not that easy to come and I was in a few situations that people told me, Dave, don't take it with the chairman. This is his product. This is his baby. You're not going to challenge. That's a wrong battle to take, and I took it, and because it just didn't align with my truth.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's so important. If you don't feel like you are whole, you at least have to speak your mind. Now, I've also learned, and again, whether right or wrong, but I I think it's so important in this role, and I've lived this role in different ways, not with the title, with different titles, but similar relationships with the owners. It is not my company. And we agree that on most of what we discuss and talk about, but certainly not everything. And I think it's so important to have that balance of being able to speak your mind when you think something isn't right or a strategy isn't exactly what it is not accomplishing what we thought it would, or just like you said, like here's what I see as true. But also I have to execute on what our owners and what the board ultimately decides, whether I agree with it or not. And I think that's the that problem. I didn't put that as like the hardest thing is that I've experienced as a CEO, because I feel like I've experienced that for a long time. But that doesn't just that's not just limited to executives and owners. A director and their team, they're going to surely have managers that don't all agree, but it's our responsibility to speak our mind and say, look, I don't think this is right. I think this is wrong for this, and this reason. We air it out and discuss, but ultimately, if the decision's made to go in the direction that you don't choose, you don't have the freedom to have to have your own opinion on it. At that point, we all share the same opinion. We've discussed it. You don't agree, but we still have to go in this direction, and you have to act like you do.
Just to change gears, before we clicked record, I found out that you play in a tribute or cover band, right?
Yeah, cover band. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really curious. Well, what did you learn from being a member of a cover band to leadership? What did you find any correlations, patterns, and things that you learned about yourself?
Yeah, a few things. It's funny you should ask that question. I was kind of worried where you were going with that. I'm glad you didn't ask me to like sing anything a cappella here, although I do sing in the band. A few things. I think first off, I lead the band, right? I don't look at it as my band, but I think if you were to ask the band members, I book the gigs, I set up the gear, I'm meeting with our clients. Um, just because it's not a company the size of my company here, there's 5 members. One of them's my wife, by the way, so that is a totally different dynamic. But even just with the 3 members of the band who I love dearly, you have to be honest. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to admit your mistakes. It's really no different whether you're managing a team of 3, 5, or 350. But the other thing that I did learn about myself is that I'm actually really introverted, and I didn't realize this. until I joined a cover band. And let me explain to you what I mean. I thought I thought that being an extrovert or an introvert was dependent upon your ability to work with people. And what I've learned, which I'm from your expressions, you probably know as well, it's really where do you get energy? Do you get energy from being around groups of people, or do you get energy from being alone? Now, that doesn't mean you don't have the ability to have skills in communicating. And I have a career in sales, so whether it's making phone calls and cold calls and walking my territory back in the day to leading training seminars of 200 people or conferences, but the cover band taught me that I actually prefer to be alone. Now, I'm going to explain what I mean here. Obviously, I'm not alone when I'm playing music in front of, a bar or a venue that we've been contracted to. But I don't have to interact with people in that environment. I'm playing my music, I'm behind my keyboard or guitar, I'm behind the mic, and I'm doing the thing that I enjoy to do, which is make music with the five people that are on stage with me. The fact that other people are there just makes it fun, but I don't have to interact with them. So for me as a leader, once I realized that, and I found myself in my work environment, like surrounding myself with these roles and responsibilities that are engaging people, that actually drain my energy, it caused me to look at how I took care of myself out of work, in, even going to conferences and events, just knowing that that is not the place that I get my energy. It's a place that I get fulfillment. I enjoy what I do, but I don't gain energy by being around people. I really need to decompress, alone time, quiet time, having dinner by myself when possible. Of course, we're not talking about when I'm around my family, my wife and kids, but yeah. So a little off topic, but I did learn that by joining the cover band.
Interesting. I found exactly the opposite. Yeah. I remember because our musical director always encouraged us to interact with each other. So it was the interaction is very important through the music, but I found myself actually always at the front. Now, when I play solo, the lead guitar, so I play solo. Makes sense, right? I jump forward, but then rhythm or support, I'll just step. No, I see myself, and I started to observe myself and see, whoa. And I learned about my leadership, how I need so much to be at the front and not lead from the back. And I started to force myself to go backwards to see how's that for me. And it's kind of like don't like to be at the back. And so I learned so much from that experience about my leadership actually through that playing with the band.
Well, let me clarify something just to be totally transparent, because if you ever go on our band's website, you would see that I am not a behind the scenes guy. So when let me clarify, I don't, when I mention the introvert, I don't mean that on stage I take a back seat. I'm one of the two front people in the band. My wife does most of the lead singing, but like I sing a third of our songs. I'm out there putting out the energy on the mic in the front. But the fact that I don't have to interact with people in that environment brings me a lot of energy. A better example is we have a neighborhood block party every single year. So because we live in the neighborhood and we own this cover band, we perform for the neighborhood block party. If I was given a choice, now listen, we volunteer our time at this block party. Okay, it takes 90 minutes to set up the gear. It takes another 90 minutes to break down the gear. It's 4 hours of sweating and playing and sun and navigating the rain if we're in the rain. Like all of that seems like a lot. I would much prefer that than mingling with people for 4 hours. That doesn't mean I don't love them and I'm thankful to have them in my life, but the energy associated with talking to somebody one on one or in small groups in that environment, it takes energy from me. Where the band actually brings energy because I still view it as me being alone. There's that shield at the edge of the stage where I'm not really interacting with you. I'm in my own space.
And I'm curious, you mentioned you have kids. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, we have three children, 13, 12, and 10, two girls and a boy.
two boys and a girl. And what did you learn from parenting about your leadership, and how do you cross over leadership at home, leadership at work?
Yeah, it's like there's no difference in my mind between parenting and leadership. It's like a different company, but it's the same job, really. Different company, different people, different ages, but it's the same gig. And the things that I find myself weak at in leadership in a professional sense, I find myself weak at in a as a dad.
I appreciate so much that what you just mentioned, because I see so much synergy between being a parent and being a leader. I saw so much of my leadership at the corporate world in my relationship with my kids, and vice versa. When I was years ago a control freak, maybe still, I was a control freak at home too. So I said, oh, I'm control freak at home and at work. But many people actually see that actually, oh, we are different. And I said, that's impossible. Yeah, unless you wear a mask either at home or at work, right?
That's true. Were you talking to my wife? Did she put you up to that one? The control freak thing? Just kidding.
JP, it was such a honor, such a pleasure. I really had a lot of fun talking to you, and yeah. What is your band? I'm going to share. Can I share the band website on the show notes?
Absolutely sure. It's called two-fifths crazy, like a fraction spelled out. Two-fifths crazy.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for checking us out. And thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, and thank you for watching. See you next time.
See you next time.